Hello everyone, welcome to Kelowna Flying Solo Toastmasters annual Christmas party. This evening we have a special event for your viewing pleasure. Our club members, all of our club members here, and some welcome guests are going to present a play. And this play is written by Sandra Stonehouse, one of our Toastmaster members of Kelowna Flying Solo, and this is called The Case of the Grinch versus Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yes folks, it is a Christmas tale. What you're going to be seeing is starting off with the story, and then we're going to be going to a court trial. I'm going to start off by reading the story. In the cold and barren regions of the North Pole, the home of Santa and his reindeers, shimmering snowflakes were gently falling in this land of extraordinary wonder and magic. A land so vast and so remote that only the hardiest can survive its unforgiving and brutal landscape. Despite all this, Santa and his hardy team of reindeer, along with the elves, have flourished here for many, many years. Excitement and anticipation were in the air. Christmas would soon be here. Santa and all available elves were busy in the toy shop working to ensure that the toys would be completed before the big day. Everything seemed to be on schedule. However, no one was prepared for what was to follow. It was on the morning of December 19th, 2012, at approximately 9 a.m., Santa received the news that Rudolph was missing from his usual place in the reindeer's barn. The two larger elf guards were found asleep on the floor of the reindeer barn, and a discarded glass found nearby contained an unknown substance. The news of Rudolph's disappearance traveled fast among the other reindeer, who were shocked to discover that their dear Rudolph was missing. A search was made of the whole barn, and as well as the shop, Rudolph's favorite places and any other places that he may have frequented. After the initial search turned up nothing, Santa returned to the reindeer barn to search for any clues to Rudolph's disappearance. It had rained the previous night, so if someone had taken Rudolph, they may have left tracks in the dirt. Santa noticed a very odd, wet, pointy footprints in the area where Rudolph slept, alongside other footprints that appeared to Santa to be elf size. From the looks of the scene, Santa suspected that Rudolph had been Santa suspected that Rudolph had put up a fight before subdued by a person or persons unknown. Santa noticed green threads in amongst the debris on the ground, mixed in with the straw Rudolph slept on. Strands of reindeer fur were scattered over the barn floor. There were a few white strands of fabric that Santa could not identify. If Santa was going to solve this mystery, he had to start asking questions. Someone knows more than they're letting on, and he had to find out who knew what. The reindeer are very proud animals that perform a very valuable role pulling Santa's sleigh on Christmas Eve. Without them, Santa would be unable to make his yearly trip of delivering toys. Therefore, Santa goes to great lengths to protect them from any harm. He has strict rules as to who looks after the reindeer and only selects elves that he trusts to do the job. These particular elves are of a bigger stature than the ones that make the toys in Santa's workshop. That's why Santa was suspicious of the elf-sized footprints he saw near the area where Rudolph slept. No smaller toy maker elves are allowed in the barns, which house the reindeers. So how did those footprints get there? Santa left the barn to check the area outside. Again, he found the same set of pointed shoe pattern prints and the same two sets of elf shoe prints. He followed the tracks to the edge of the compound near the front gate. There he saw a large gate lock had been tampered with and was hanging loose. Santa knew he had the only set of keys to unlock the main gate, and as far as he was concerned, the keys never left his pocket. He pushed open the gate and stepped out into the opening. There he noticed large tread marks in the snow, which would indicate that someone had placed Rudolph in a large sleigh. Why hadn't Rudolph used his red nose as a warning to the other reindeer? He had used it as a warning beacon many times before. This could only mean one thing. It was suspected that whoever took Rudolph was well aware of his legendary red nose and had somehow prevented him from using it to warn the others. Santa knew he needed to help fast to find Rudolph and bring him home. He was fully aware that the weather forecast for Christmas Eve was calling for heavy fog. That could only mean one thing. Rudolph would be needed to guide his sleigh. Santa had no other option. He knew that he would have to hire his good friend, Inspector Angus Brindery, to find his precious Rudolph. Inspector Brindery was a seasoned investigator in the field of abductions and had an air of authority about him, which Santa appreciated. He gave the inspector a detailed account of what had happened so far, showing him the reindeer barn, the footprints, and the sleigh marks outside the main gate. The inspector wasted no time fielding questions to all the elves, including the toy maker elves, whose footprints were found inside the reindeer barn. He was told by some of the toy making elves that Santa had recently reprimanded 2 elves for making inferior toys and not watching for quality control. About 2 weeks ago, an elf had overheard the 2 in question talking together in an angry tone, saying that they were going to get back at Santa for reprimanding them. However, he was unable to hear the rest of the conversation on how they were going to get back at Santa. But he was sure that he had heard the name Grinch being mentioned. The informant was reluctant to give the inspector the names of the 2 elves because of the strong bonds in the elf community. However, the elf was aware of the seriousness of the situation and therefore felt obligated to tell the inspector the names of the elves in question. The inspector would follow up with the 2 suspects. He first spoke to Santa about the conversation he had with the informant elf, who does not want to get involved or have his name mentioned, but did provide the inspector with the names of the elves who talked about making plans to get back at Santa. Santa was saddened to hear that the elves were out for retribution. He felt betrayed, but knew in his heart that he would have to move forward to find out what they planned on doing. The inspector wanted some background information on these 2 elves regarding any past problems that Santa may have had with them. He told the inspector that he had to intervene several times over the past months to keep these 2 elves in line. He was growing more and more frustrated with their poor attitude and poor work ethic. With these 2 elves angry at Santa, the inspector broached the question to him. Could it be possible that these 2 could be responsible for the disappearance of Rudolph? Santa had to sit down and think that one over. He knew the 2 didn't have the ability to pull this off without outside help. It was then the inspector asked Santa if he knew anyone by the name of Grinch. He asked why he wanted to know. He then told Santa what the elf informant had overheard in the conversation between the 2 angry elves. He heard the name Grinch. To Santa, the Grinch was everything evil and nasty. Everything that Santa was not. He knew of his hatred for Christmas, his dislike for little children and presents. Anything that would be considered happy, the Grinch hated, especially Santa. Santa saw through the veiled attempt last time when he tried to prove he liked Christmas. The so-called saving Christmas was just a ruse to fool everyone to believing that the Grinch had softened. It was at that point that Santa came to a sudden realization that it had to have been the Grinch and the renegade elves, Elgar O'Connor and Dagar Murphy, that took Rudolph, and now he realized why. The Grinch must have known of the Christmas Eve forecast of heavy fog, and what that would mean for Santa. He would need Rudolph to guide his sleigh, but with Rudolph out of the way, Christmas was at risk of being canceled. A search of the complex was launched to find Elgar and Dagar. Well, it didn't take long before news reached Santa that the elves had been found hiding in a small pantry near the main kitchen. And it didn't take long for both elves to confess their part in kidnapping Rudolph. They admitted how the Grinch lured them into a scheme to kidnap Rudolph after he discovered through a spy that the 2 elves in question were angry at Santa and they wanted revenge. They also admitted to spiking the water of the elf guards to gain access to the barn. As for the keys to the gate, they had watched Santa's routine to determine a good time to steal the keys and then return them before he knew they were missing. The Grinch also promised the elves money if they helped kidnap Rudolph. The 2 elves were shaking in their shoes now that they had confessed to the crime of kidnapping. The inspector told them of the seriousness of the crime and what the repercussions could be if Rudolph was not returned safely. The 2 elves realized that they had no choice but to tell the authorities where they had hid Rudolph. The inspector Santa, the two elves, and one of the reindeer guards all followed Elgar and Daegor to a small abandoned building about a mile from Santa's compound. There in a musty, wet corner of a room, curled up in a ball, was Rudolph. His legs had been tied with twine. His fur was wet and matted. He did not respond at first, but until he heard Santa's voice. Santa glanced around the room and noticed that no food or water had been left for poor Rudolph. He glared at both Elgar and Daegor, but didn't say a word to either of them. Rudolph returned to Santa's compound to much fanfare. All the elves and other reindeer were happy to have Rudolph back safe and sound. Santa made sure that Rudolph received extra food and water, fresh straw for his bed, and a warmer spot within the reindeer barn. He checked on him daily, and he was surprised how fast Rudolph rebounded from his ordeal. Christmas Eve was drawing even nearer, and the weather forecast had not changed. Would Rudolph be well enough to guide his sleigh past the fog? Santa watched him run around the compound, and he appeared to be his old self. After studying all the facts, Santa felt confident that Rudolph was ready to guide his sleigh, and he knew in his heart that Rudolph would not want it any other way. By the 23rd of December, the last of the toys and presents were loaded on the sleigh, and Santa checked the last-minute details of his trip to ensure he had everything under his control. So with a flourish of ho, 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 Santa, the reindeers, and of course Rudolph gleefully climbed into the night sky on Christmas Eve on their annual trip to deliver toys and presents to every little girl and boy. Rudolph's bright nose shone brighter than ever before, piercing the thick, unforgiving fog like a lighthouse beacon. For the entire trip, Rudolph proudly led the team of reindeer, much to the relief of a very happy Santa. With the fog now only a distant memory, Santa settled into his sleigh. He did his usual circle of the world, joyously leaving toys for all the boys and girls. He was so happy that he sang out, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
All rise. The court of the Glacier Summit is now in session. The Honorable Grant Turnbull presiding. Would the accused please stand? Mr. Grinch. Mr. Grinch, on or about the 19th day of December 2012, you entered the premises of Santa Claus. While there, you abducted a reindeer by the name of Rudolph and kept him confined. The charges against you include abduction and forcible confinement.
How do you plead?
I didn't do it. No way. No, I didn't do it.
Edgar O'Connor, on or about the 19th day of December 2012, you entered the premises of Santa Claus. While there, you participated in the abduction of a reindeer. The charges against you are accessory to commit an abduction and forcible confinement.
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Daegor Murphy, on or about the 19th of December 2012, you entered the premises of Santa Claus. While there, you participated in the abduction of a reindeer. The charges against you are accessory to commit an abduction and forcible confinement.
How do you plead?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Please be seated.
Counselor, call your first witness.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here today in this court of law to prove the guilt of the three accused sitting before you. This is a story of hatred, greed, jealousy, and envy. The evidence will show that at approximately 9 a.m. on the morning of December 19, 2012, the three accused maliciously abducted poor Rudolph, a very valuable reindeer, and kept him hidden in an abandoned shed approximately a mile from Santa's compound with no food or water. Rudolph was selected to be a part of a team of 8 other reindeer who Santa needed to pull his sleigh on Christmas Eve. The reindeer's nose, it shines so brightly that it has the ability to cut through dense fog. Because of the heavy fog forecasted to hit on Christmas Eve, Santa would need Rudolph to guide his sleigh that night. The evidence will show that the Grinch was aware of the weather forecast for Christmas Eve and set out to sabotage Christmas by abducting Rudolph, therefore preventing Mr. Claus from making his annual trip to delivering toys to all the boys and girls. We will prove the Grinch managed to manipulate Edgar O'Connor and Dagar Murphy to help him with the abduction. Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we, the accused, will show how the Grinch, once revered to society for stealing Christmas presents from the town of Whoville and then returning them, managed to turn his life around and prove to you that he could be a nice person. The Grinch has suffered the same mental disorder that has plagued thousands of other people here. And we will show how with help he has been rehabilitated and to become a productive member of society.
Counselor, you can call your first witness.
I call Agus Sindarn to the stand.
The court calls Agus and Darren to the stand. Please stand. Do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name.
Angus Sandra.
Please sit down.
Mr. Sandarin, do you know the 2 accused?
Yes, I do.
Could you please point them out for the jury?
Elgar and Dagar.
Thank you. For the court record, the witness is pointing to the 2 accused. Mr. Sandarin, you were sitting near the 2 accused at Santa's compound where you overheard a conversation between them.
Yes, I was.
Please tell the court what you were doing at that time.
I was having a peppermint latte.
Could you please tell the court what you overheard?
Well, they were talking in an angry tone amongst themselves and how they were going to get back at Santa. I heard them say this. And they did mention the Grinch in their conversation, but I couldn't hear any more.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Does the defense wish to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor, I do. Mr. Sedarin, do you really take the 2 accused seriously?
Well, not really.
Why not?
Well, for one thing, they don't possess the intelligence needed in devising any kind of plan on their own.
Where is the proof?
Well, I don't know. I just heard they were stupid.
Objection.
So what are you
Sustained.
Sustained.
So what are you saying then? Do you really don't know anything about them? Is that not right?
Well, yeah.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You may step down. Counselor, would you please call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The court calls Edgar O'Connor.
The court calls Edgar O'Connor to the witness stand. Do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name.
Elgar O'Connor.
Please be seated.
Mr. O'Connor, do you know the accused, Mr. Grinch?
I do.
Please tell the court how you came to know Mr. Grinch.
Well, a few weeks ago, I found a note under my pillow from Mr. Grinch requesting me to meet him in the woods outside the compound that same evening.
And at this point, did you have any idea what he wanted?
No, I had nothing, I had no idea.
Please continue.
I knew of the Grinch's notoriety and what he had done in the small community of Whoville. I was afraid to go alone. So I convinced Dagar to come along with me. When I first saw him, he had this weird smirk on his face as we approached. I knew he was angry at Santa, and he wanted to get revenge for being reprimanded. That's when he said he could make it happen. He said if we helped him kidnap Rudolph, he was going to give each of us, me and Dagar, $500 each. We both agreed at this point. Within the following days, though, of this meeting, we had several more meetings with Mr. Grinch, who laid out the plans for the kidnapping and what each of us was expected to do.
Are you referring to the orders he was giving you to carry out what?
That's right.
What were you expected to do?
I was ordered to steal the keys from Santa to open the front gate so Mr. Grinch could get into the compound.
And please explain to the court how you managed to remove the keys from Santa.
I knew that Santa took a nap every afternoon at 1 o'clock. I was told by Grinch to observe what time he got up in the afternoon and then to ensure there was enough time to remove the keys, open the gate, and then return them back into Santa's coat pocket.
And what else were you expected to do?
I was also ordered to steal a large sleigh big enough to fit Rudolph. That's how we were able to transport him to the abandoned building. We took one of the horses that Santa has in a small paddock to pull the sleigh.
And were there any threats made against you and Mr. Murphy?
Yes, there was.
Please explain to the court what those threats were.
Mr. Grinch threatened to physically harm me and Dagar if we did not follow through with his orders. He said we would regret it if we told anyone about the kidnapping.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Does the defense wish to cross-examine this witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we do. Mr. O'Connor, you have a history of break and enter.
I object, Your Honor. There's no relevance to this case.
Sustained. Mr. Lloyd, please continue your line of questioning.
Did the elves know that fog was forecast for Christmas Eve?
Yeah, it was common knowledge. They all knew.
Were you quite angry with Santa Claus for the reprimand that he gave you and Mr. Murphy? Is that not correct?
Yes, it was.
So you really wanted to do something to get back at Santa. He more or less said your work was inferior. You didn't like to hear that. ESP coming from Santa. You were angry enough to get help from someone you never thought you would ever meet. And it was not the Grinch who approached you, but it was you who contacted the Grinch. Is that not true?
No, that's not how it happened.
You've already had the plan all set up. You fooled everyone into thinking that you were incapable of making any complicated kind of plan. That's exactly what you wanted to play out, didn't you?
You have it all wrong, completely wrong.
The first time you spoke to Mr. Grinch, you realized right away how easy it was going to be to manipulate him, not the other way around.
Yes, no, that's not what happened.
I object, Your Honor. Defense is leading the witness.
Overruled.
Mr. Lloyd, I charge that you, and you alone, put the kidnapping plan into motion. Mr. Murphy and Mr. Grinch did your biting and followed your orders. Is that not true?
No, it did not happen that way at all. Because Mr. Grinch did all the planning, not me and Dagar.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You can step down.
We call Dagger Murphy to the stand.
The court calls Dagmar Murphy to the stand. State your name.
Dagger Murphy.
Do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may be seated.
Mr. Murphy, you were also charged with abduction and forcible confinement. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Ma'am.
Stand.
Are you friends with Mr. O'Connor?
I was.
I gather you mean you are no longer friends?
Yes, madam.
Does your response have to do with your involvement in the abduction?
Yes, it does, very much.
Please tell the court how you got involved in the plot to abduct Rudolph.
Well, I knew Elgar was very angry with Santa. He just couldn't let it go. He is usually a likable person, but since his reprimand, he has become very negative. Frequently criticizes Santa for some of the toys that are made in the toy shop. He started talking about getting back at Santa. He had not made any plans at all until he got the note from Mr. Grinch. What he described in his testimony was all true. I did accompany him to see Mr. Grinch, and I was part of the plot. I now wish had never got involved with Elgar at all.
Mr. O'Connor, please tell the court what you did during the abduction.
I was told to spike the drinks of the elf guards with the white sleeping powder provided for me by Mr. Grinch.
And how did you do this without them seeing you?
I managed to distract the two elf guards by placing a plate of food on a table away from the glasses.
Please continue.
Yes, madam. Once the guards fell asleep, I was ordered by Mr. Grinch to place a sack over the head of Rudolph to prevent him from alerting anyone that he was in danger. Once Rudolph was subdued, he was transported in the sleigh to the old shed and tied with twine to keep him quiet.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. No further questions, Your Honor.
Does the defense wish to cross-examine?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Susan Smith.
The court calls Susan Smith to the stand. State your name and occupation.
My name is Susan Smith, and I'm a psychologist.
Do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may be seated.
Mr. Lloyd?
Mrs. Smith, would you please tell the court about the antisocial personality disorder?
Your Honor, what does this have to do with anything?
Your Honor, I have asked Mrs. Smith today to show how mental illness can affect a person's ability to know right from wrong.
Please continue, Mrs. Smith.
Certainly, Your Honor. The results of my psychological assessment of the accused, Mr. Grinch, was completed on December 28, 2012. It highlights quite accurately what a typical personality of someone with an antisocial personality disorder is like. I found long-standing examples of this disregard for other people's rights. I detected little to no sympathy at all when speaking to Mr. Grinch. He was quite callous and cynical in some of his comments as well. He showed little insight in how he manipulated and exploited people for his own gains. He has persistent patterns of negative thoughts, feelings, and behavior. I also diagnosed the accused with depression. So that explains why he doesn't like Christmas. In conclusion, Your Honor, the accused is a classic case of antisocial personality disorder.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
You're welcome.
Your witness, Ms. Lloyd. Sit down.
Yes, Your Honor.
So you're dismissed.
Mrs. Smith, how long have you been a psychologist?
For 7 years.
Only 7 years. I gather in that time you have diagnosed many people with antisocial personality disorder?
Yes, I certainly have.
And when you were interviewing these individuals, how do you know that he's not just answering whatever you think he wants to hear, you want to hear? They may just be manipulating the situation and having a good laugh at your expense, when in fact, there may be nothing wrong with the person at all. There's no mental illness.
I guess this is possible, but I have a way of questioning that leads me to prove that whether the person is telling the truth or not. But sometimes I suppose it can be questionable. You're right.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Now you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Lloyd?
I call Mr. Grinch to the stand, Your Honor.
The court calls Mr. Grinch to the witness stand. State your name.
Grinch.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Of course.
You may be seated.
Over here.
Please be seated and answer yes or no.
I'll go be seated, yes.
Mr. Lloyd?
Mr. Grinch, please tell the court your involvement in the abduction of Rudolph.
I had absolutely nothing to do with the abduction of Rudolph. Absolutely nothing.
Whatever, or where were you in Santa's compound?
I was never in Santa's compound.
Thank you, Mr. Grinch. No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution?
Mr. Grinch, tell me about your relationship with Santa Claus.
What do you want to know?
Well, for starters, do you like Santa Claus?
No, I do not like Santa Claus.
Why is that, Mr. Grinch? Has he hurt you in any way? Has he said anything against you? Please enlighten the court why you have such a dislike for Santa.
Because I hate Christmas. I hate the whole Christmas season. I hate Santa's annoying ho 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 with his loud booming voice. I especially dislike this yearly obsession with taking off with all the reindeer and giving toys to all the little children.
Yet you return all the gifts you stole from the people who were living in Whoville. This doesn't sound like someone who doesn't like Christmas or Santa.
Yeah, well, I regret returning them.
Mr. Grinch, I think your dislike of Santa was so intense that you drove the plan to this elaborate scheme of kidnapping Rudolph to sabotage the Christmas Eve trip. You sit here saying you are not guilty, when in fact you know you are. You say you have never been in Santa's compound, when in fact you know you have.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Your Honor, can you keep the witness under control?
Stay in control.
So how do we know that? Well, for starters, Mr. Grinch, we found green thread, or should I say black thread, in the straw bedding of Rudolph that matches your coat that you are wearing right now. The same black threads that were found in the sleigh used to abduct Rudolph, and your fingerprints were found in the compound on the sleigh. So how do you explain all that if you were not where you said you were?
I don't know what you're talking about. You're just trying to confuse me on purpose. I said I wasn't there. If I said I wasn't there, I wasn't there. The next thing you're going to tell me is my head's not screwed on right, or my shoes are too tight, or that my heart is too small. I'm smarter than anyone here. Smarter than you all. I need to get home to look after my dog, Max. What is this place anyways?
Mr. Grinch, this is all just an act to make us believe there is something mentally wrong with you. We can see right through your disguise. I think it is time you tell the truth. You were the one who set this whole thing up. It was you, Mr. Grinch.
Okay, I did it all. I planned everything. The abduction of Rudolph, hiding him away from Santa so he'd not be able to use his precious sleigh to deliver presents, and all the little brats in the world. I sucked in Dago and Elgar, who are both useless. So yeah, you got it from me. Are you happy now?
I am. No further questions, Your Honor.
You may sit down.
Mr. Lloyd? Your Honor, we have one more witness. I call Cindy Lou, from Whoville, to the stand.
The court calls Cindy Lou Who to the stand. Please state your name.
Cindy Lou Who.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth?
I do.
And you may be seated.
Cindy, what is it that you want to tell the court?
I want people to remember how he brought back all the toys to our houses in Whoville. That shows he has a good heart. I know he felt good bringing them all back. I was there, so I know he can be good. Please give him another chance to show the world he can be good.
Is that all?
No, sir. How would you feel if you were the Grinch?
Excellent point. Is that all?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Cindy. Your Honor.
Thank you, Cindy Lou. You may step down. The jury will now convene in the jury room.
Court adjourned.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
And what is your verdict?
Guilty, Your Honor.
Mr. Grinch, please rise. Mr. Grinch, I sentence you to 4 months of community service in the town of Whoville, helping underprivileged children rebuild their lives. Court dismissed.